4 million dogs cross under the English Channel every year. But also, right now, a train is moving through total darkness at 186 miles per hour. It is 75 meters below the surface of the ocean floor. There are 900 passengers on board, and not one of them can feel a thing. This is the Channel Tunnel, one of the most ambitious things human beings have ever built. And it almost didn't happen. Not once, not twice, but more than a dozen times over 200 years. This is the full story of how it got built, what it's actually like to ride through it, and the bizarre secrets they never put in the travel brochure. The year is 1802. Napoleon Bonaparte is the most powerful man in Europe. He has just signed a peace treaty with Britain, and an engineer named Albert Mathieu walks into his office with a proposal so audacious it sounds like a fever dream. Mathieu wants to dig a tunnel under the English Channel. Not for trains don't exist yet. For horses. Stagecoaches lit by oil lamps rolling through a horseback highway under the sea, with an artificial island halfway across so the horses can rest. Napoleon loved it, even backed it. But the peace didn't last. The wars started again, and the tunnel died before a single shovel hit the ground. That became a pattern. For the next 186 years, some of the most brilliant engineers in the world kept proposing a channel crossing, a bridge, a tunnel, a hybrid. In 1834, trains existed, so the plans got more serious. In 1880, British engineers actually started drilling. They got 2 full kilometers into the chalk, 2 kilometers under the seabed, and then they stopped. The British military had a panic attack. If you can build a tunnel for trade and tourists, they argued, you can build a tunnel for an invading army. The government shut the project down. They filled the hole back in. And for the next 108 years, through 2 world wars, the jet age, the space race, every single new proposal hit the same wall. Politics, money, or fear. It took until 1988, when Britain and France finally agreed to stop arguing and start digging, for the Channel Tunnel to actually begin. What they were about to attempt had never been done before, not even close. The English Channel at its narrowest point is 21 miles wide. But the tunnel couldn't run straight. It had to curve and weave through the rock to stay inside a specific layer of chalk marl, a soft blue-gray rock that sits between harder layers above and below. The actual tunnels ended up 31.5 miles long, 3 of them running parallel. To cut through it, they used 11 tunnel boring machines, TBMs. Each one was as tall as a 4-story building and as long as 2 football pitches. They ate through rock at around 75 meters a day, which sounds slow until you remember they were doing it under the ocean. 13,000 workers, 6 years. Both countries drilling from their own coastlines, inching toward each other through the dark. On October 30th, 1990, 2 years into construction, a British probe drill broke through the rock and touched the French probe on the other side. For the first time in human history, England and France were physically connected. Workers on both sides were shaking hands through a hole no wider than an arm, 50 meters below the English Channel. The official breakthrough came 6 months later, when the tunnel was wide enough for a person to walk through. But here's the detail most people never hear. When the British TBMs finished their work, engineers faced a problem. These machines weighed 1,300 tons each. Getting them back out would cost millions and take months. So instead, they steered each machine sideways, drove it directly into the chalk wall, and sealed it in. One of those machines is still there right now, entombed in the rock, somewhere under the English Channel. It has been there for over 30 years. The Channel Tunnel opened on May 6, 1994, 1 year late and more than double its original budget, with a final bill of $465 billion. Queen Elizabeth II and French President Mitterrand's trains met nose-to-nose beneath the sea for the opening ceremony. The American Society of Civil Engineers named it one of the 7 wonders of the modern world. Eurostar ran its first passenger service 6 months later. So what does it actually feel like to be on this train? You board at Paris Gare du Nord, one of the grand old stations of Europe, all iron and glass and echoing announcements. The train itself is sleek and white, almost biological looking, like a whale that learned to run on rails. Standard class is comfortable, wide seats, a food trolley, phone charging. It feels like a short-haul flight, except quieter, and nobody has taken your legroom. For the first hour and a half, you're above ground in France, the countryside blurring past at up to 186 miles per hour. Fields, towns, the flat northern landscape giving way to rolling hills. Outside the window, the world looks like a time lapse. Then the train slows, slightly, almost imperceptibly. A few passengers look up from their phones. And then, dark. The window goes black. Not dim, completely, absolutely black. The sound outside changes from rushing wind to a low, dense hum, like being inside a machine. Your ears might pop very slightly. And somewhere in the back of your brain, a thought forms. There is an ocean above me right now. The tunnel runs an average of 45 meters below the seabed, and at its deepest, 75 meters. Above the tunnel ceiling is solid chalk and rock. Above that is the seabed, and above that, up to 55 meters of English Channel seawater. You are not underwater. You are under the bottom of the sea, and the whole structure is wide enough to fit a double-decker bus, holding steady at 100 miles per hour. You don't feel a bump. You don't feel a curve. The engineers built it so precisely that the ride through the tunnel is, somehow, smoother than the open countryside. 35 minutes after the darkness begins, light, sudden, white, English light. The countryside appears, green hills, sheep. The train is already in a different country. You have crossed an international border at 100 miles per hour without going through a gate, a checkpoint, or even a noticeable bump. The whole journey, Paris to London, takes 2 hours and 16 minutes. By plane, you'd still be sitting at the gate. Now, before we wrap up, the Channel Tunnel secrets. The ones that didn't make the official brochure. Secret 1. The Night Star. In the 1990s, while the tunnel was still being built, railway engineers got excited. They commissioned a fleet of luxury overnight sleeper trains, full berths, linen service, the lot. 139 train cars were actually manufactured. They sat in depots, complete and ready to run. And then, in 1997, the business case collapsed. The service was canceled before a single passenger ever boarded. The trains were sold, most of them to Via Rail in Canada, for a fraction of their cost. Right now, some of those carriages are running overnight routes in Ontario, a luxury Channel Tunnel sleeper, quietly living its retirement on the other side of the Atlantic. Secret 2. The hypnosis fear. The engineers who designed the driver's cab had a genuine technical concern. that driving through 35 minutes of absolute featureless darkness at 100 mph might have a hypnotic or dissociative effect on the driver. So they deliberately made the cab window much smaller than a standard train window, not for structural reasons, to reduce the hypnotic field of view. When you're on the Eurostar, the driver is essentially staring at a tiny porthole into the void. Secret 3. Mission Impossible used it before most people had ridden it. The 1996 film, released just 2 years after the tunnel opened, used the Channel Tunnel as its explosive finale. Ethan Hunt on top of a Eurostar while a helicopter pursues him through the tunnel. Physically impossible, the tunnel is too narrow for a helicopter, but nobody cared. Millions of people saw Mission Impossible before they ever rode the Eurostar, which means for an entire generation, their first mental image of this engineering wonder was Tom Cruise being chased underground, and Secret 4, the one we opened with. 4 million dogs cross the Channel Tunnel every year. There is a dedicated pet check facility at the terminal. Dogs, cats, ferrets, all cleared through a pet passport system, loaded aboard, and delivered safely to the other side. The Channel Tunnel is, among other things, the world's busiest underwater pet corridor. The Channel Tunnel turns 31 years old in 2025, and after 3 decades of Eurostar running it as a near monopoly, something is finally changing. In October 2025, the UK's Office of Rail and Road officially approved a competitor, Virgin Trains Europe, to run through the tunnel within 5 years. Competition on the world's most extraordinary rail route is coming. Fares could drop, new routes could open. A journey that already feels like the future might get even better. 307 miles, 2 countries, 1 tunnel, 75 meters under the ocean floor. It took 200 years of failed attempts, 13,000 workers, 6 years of drilling, and a buried machine that nobody will ever dig up, to make a journey that now feels completely ordinary to the people who take it every day. That's the thing about the greatest engineering achievements. The best ones become invisible. You stop noticing the miracle because the miracle is now just the commute. If you've ever ridden the Eurostar, what was it like the first time you came out the other side? Drop it in the comments, and if this is the kind of deep dive you want more of, extraordinary engineering, hidden history, the stories behind the things we take for granted, subscribe. We put one of these out every week. See you in the next one.